back Jay. Harden. Bullseye.
Sixers looking very focused in the second half. Maxey looking for more. He's got it!
Daniel House, little up and under on the lob, and then flies in with the emphatic one-hand jam.
Niang looking for more from outside. Bang, bang, George Niang!
Joel, the process heavy.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Pick Swap podcast. And it looks like I got invited to Michael Rubin's party, but Sean didn't make the cut. How you feeling about that, Sean?
Yeah, I guess my invite got lost in the mail, or
Yeah.
I don't know what happened with that. Grant Williams
Yeah.
maybe took it from me. I'm not
PJ
really
Tucker didn't get one either, so no worries.
Yeah. Shout out PJ for airing out the grievances online. That's when that made me sad for PJ. It did.
I hope he didn't actually spend the 4th of July alone. He's always welcome to any party that I have. So if you're listening, PJ, know you always have a place to hang out down here. But we got a lot to talk about today. We're early in July here, first week after free agency and the draft. We talked a little bit about some of the draft prospects and everything last week. And there has been a lot that has transpired since then. So a lot to cover today. Where do you want to start, Sean?
Yeah, I guess we'll start with the elephant in the room, which is still the James Harden situation. So I just dropped a video on the channel, which you guys can check out, where I went pretty in depth on just like where the two sides are, where James Harden point of view with the Sixers. So you guys should check that out as well. But I do want to get your thoughts on it, James. So basically, the situation at hand is James Harden. The expectation from the second that he signed that last contract was that he would opt out and sign more of a long-term deal this offseason. Then there was the whispers of him pushing free agency, trying to potentially find a new team or drive up a market, and there wasn't one. So he opted in with the decision to get traded with the Los Angeles Clippers as kind of the intended team. There seems to be the only team with some mutual interest there. What are your thoughts on like the whole situation, and what do you expect to happen from here?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of coming to terms with it. Looks like this is going to be a similar team to what we saw last year, minus a few role players and bringing in some new ones, which we'll talk about today. But from everything we've seen over the last week, and it's hard to read into these different things that have happened over the last couple of weeks, whether it's the Michael Rubin party or the Daryl Morey tweet in front of Caramel Cookie or whatever it is, all of the very Sixers things to have happened over the last week or so. I feel like Harden's going to be back here from everything we've seen and heard. The market for him is
Non-existent.
I was gonna say non-existent, shockingly low. I would characterize it as. So everything we've seen so far is just the Sixers are not getting anywhere near the value in return that they would be willing to move on from him for. So if that's the case, you can't blame them for trying to figure it out. And I will say a lot of people are going to be very negative about that. I think if he's able to buy in, what I'm what I'm worried about is maybe him not caring too much.
Yeah.
But I want to believe in the better version of him, and I want to believe that he does appreciate Joel and Maxey and even Tobias and Philadelphia as a city. So I don't know. I'm hopeful for it, although not outwardly excited.
So what's your level of concern for that? Because we've been through the Ben Simmons situation where the issue was Ben Simmons did not show up, that he held out. We don't have to worry about that with James Harden. He will be there, but that might be worse. Do you think there's a chance that he dogs it, that he shows up 75 pounds overweight again, like he's done in two other spots, as he did in Brooklyn, as he did in Houston? And I get they're different situations. Houston, I even kind of give him a pass for, because like at that point, in fairness, like he did exhaust all his options. They did try with a million different guys, with the Chris Paul, with Russell Westbrook. They tried to make that a functioning competitive team, and it wasn't, and it was past the window. It was time for him to move on. Brooklyn was more of, I guess, alarming to me. And don't get me wrong, I supported at the time because I wanted him to come to Philly. And I guess like there's that, I guess, having a horse in the race situation. But do you think there's a chance that he pulls kind of the same stunts, or are you just hoping that it isn't the case?
I'm going to allow him to prove me wrong here. And I'm going to say that I think there's too much mutual respect just in between the locker room and the front office. And whether this was a feud internally or whether it was blown out of proportion, I do believe that there is some, genuine level of care and respect between Daryl Morey and James Harden. We've seen it definitely from Morey's side, but maybe if you're looking at how this all played out, like Harden did have the chance to see what his market was in free agency, and he decided it wasn't high enough. And the Sixers have now had a chance to see what his market was in the trade market, or what his value was in the trade market. And again, not good enough. So both sides have now looked on the other side of the fence, and maybe they're realizing the grass isn't greener over there, which might very well be the case, whether people want to hear it or not. That might end up being the situation that plays out, and I don't know if it's necessarily the worst option. It's like if his market is that low, as it was reported today, they're not even willing to put Norman Powell in the deal.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about real bad dark times if that was the case.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I think, in the minority in the way that I'm not worried about him dogging it, because he just can't, in my mind. We see what the market is right now. These things do eventually stick to you. When you demand out of two places because you don't want to be there, teams do notice that thing. And it's always the greater the talent, the longer your leash with those kind of antics. We just saw Kyrie Irving ink a pretty significant deal that I was honestly surprised to see, but there's still a 3-year deal. That is no longer the max contract. That it's a similar situation. And frankly, Kyrie Irving is a way more talented basketball player than James Harden at this stage in both of their careers. Now, for James Harden, like, I'm not worried about him dogging it, because I think there's a real world where if he does the same nonsense where he shows up out of weight, there's just not another team that's interested in him ever again. Like, I can see a world where he's a veteran minimum guy moving forward, which would be crazy for the talent level that he is and for still the usefulness that he is as a basketball player. But with all that being said, James, I can't do it. Like, I can't talk myself into, this is an unserious franchise. If they go the length of the season, and I can hear you out on, like, maybe we're waiting for closer to the deadline. We want to see how things go in the building. Let's see how much Maxey's improved. Let's see what teams are either contending more than they expected and are looking for win now chips, like potentially a James Harden, or if it is a team looking to be a seller. Maybe the Bulls start super slow and want to blow things up, trade Zach LaVine. I can kind of hear on those arguments. But if we go the entire length of the season, we go into the playoffs with the same exact starting five as last year, this is just an unserious franchise, James.
I'm gonna defer with you here. Not in a lot of ways, but just in enough so that we can have this conversation. But I like, if you're looking at this, like, plainly, it takes at least two teams, and we see how complicated this can get. It takes at least two teams to trade players, right? And there has to be significant value on the Sixers side. If the market for James Harden, like, we're talking James Harden, legacy and all, if the market for him is Marcus Morris and Robert Covington and maybe a second, God knows what the market is for Tobias Harris right now. There's no way that you can look at that and say, this is something the Sixers should do. Daryl Morey cannot make James Harden and Tobias Harris more valuable than they are. Yep. And if other teams and the market is telling to them, we get nothing back for this, we would actually be, like, draining our franchise and probably ruining everything and seeing just, like, the automatic worst possible outcome. Yeah. So you can't blame them for that. What you can blame them for is waiting too long, not having their shit together, and then watching free agents walk away. You can blame them for that, which, you know, we are seeing a little bit of the tail end of this, and maybe they're going to pick it up and try to find loose pieces around the edges to still give them flexibility, which, sure, that makes sense and probably what they would pass it as. But I think it was a mistake to watch this free agency just blow by without a real answer, letting three guys go that were in your rotation last season. And really, I mean, outside of Niang, I mean, I don't know if I don't think I would have brought Shake back on that deal, but, like, McDaniels one hurt a little bit to see him walk, especially after, you know, everything that transpired to get him here.
Yeah, that was the one that hurt me the most, was McDaniels, because to me, he's like a primetime Nick Nurse guy. Like, the people saying that, like, he's such a Toronto Raptor, it's like, those were Nick Nurse guys who's currently in Philadelphia. Like, that's the one that doesn't make sense to me. And it was like 4.2 mil or something. I think it was 2 year, 9.6 mil, something like that. Yeah. Like, that's Dan House money. That's like, if you want a guy, you pay him that. And I do get, like, for starters, the Sixers just don't have a lot to work with financially. They don't have a lot of pieces trade-wise either. And also, the bigger piece to me is they're kind of back in the corner of, if there is a James Harden trade or if there is a Tobias Harris trade, both will drastically alter what your needs are as a team. So you kind of, like, want to sit back and make sure that you have your assets for when you know what you need, versus rather than going out there and, I don't know, signing a true point guard, maybe a more true point guard than Pat Bev, and then you end up getting one back in a trade, and then you kind of screw yourself from a roster standpoint. So Daryl Morey's not in the easiest position here. I get all that, but none of these things make me feel better about the Sixers' chances of contending for a championship or improving theirs. And I don't know. I'm very frustrated with the state of the team. I'm also over. I was kind of a leap year kind of guy was my mindset for a little bit. I don't think it makes any sense anymore. I think you need to do whatever you can do. And the reason I say that is because I really don't see any value in creating that level of cap space. This seems to be something Morey's starting to package and market and believe is the right route. Stars just don't leave in free agency anymore. It just doesn't happen. The best player to leave on a significant deal this year was Fred VanVleet. Don't get me wrong. I like Fred VanVleet. I think he's a nice player. Is he a 3-year, $130 million player? Absolutely not. And the only reason that he got that is because you have to pay that for guys to leave and especially go to Houston at this point in time. So I don't see a world where creating that cap space, letting James Harden and Tobias Harris walk, where the Sixers end up on the better end of that either.
But again, and I'm going to differ on you here again. I'm liking this, actually. Normally we agree on everything. I do agree with you to a large degree. But the other side that I will just bring up is, like, to kind of start from the beginning, we've watched this team be a 1 seed, a 3 seed, and a 4 seed. Like,
and where they
should.
Ended up.
Well, no, exactly. No, 100%. Like, I fully agree with you. It's how much are we weighing on talent? How much are we weighing on? I mean, obviously we've had significant bad games from the 2 stars here, but how much are you weighing? How much does the coach change that for you? How much does the growth of Maxey change that for you? And the things they did make a significant change, and some people will overrate it and some people will underrate it. I think that we aren't rating it high enough quite yet. We haven't seen the impact yet. This is hopefully, from all accounts, going to be a different team in terms of just how they're run and how they operate. And they should be, on paper, they absolutely are talented enough to compete in the Eastern Conference all up and down. They should be able to make a conference finals. Like, talent-wise, the Sixers are good enough to be there. So what do they have to change? Maybe it's tactics. Maybe it's other things. But I think it's really hard for them right now. And I don't mean to be like a Daryl Morey kiss ass or a Sixers front office kiss ass. Like, I don't want to come off that way, even though it might kind of seem like that right now. But if you can't make their trade value go up just by snapping your finger. I think they're in a tough spot. The money, again, I think they messed up in free agency, but I don't know, man. Maybe they'll piece it together, but I don't know. I'm just being the house optimist. I'm trying to be, at least.
No, I like it. And I do agree with you that I think Nick Nurse is going to make a significant difference in this team. My biggest issue is James Harden is, I don't want to say uncoachable because that's the wrong kind of connotation that I mean in this regard, but he's not going to stylistically change his game. He is exactly who he is at this stage of his career. And to be honest, from Harden's perspective, he's been doing it for over a decade and has been an MVP and had this level of success. I get it. But I also don't see a world where the Nick Nurse style and the James Harden style blend very well. I don't see there's any conversation that they can get James Harden to start running and shooting off screens, or dude, we had to drop to our knees and beg for this guy to catch and shoot for periods of time. One of the more basic basketball skills. And for Harden, even looking back at this whole year, these leaks about wanting more basketball freedom or playing the way he wants to play, what do you want, dude? What more is there that we can put on James Harden's plate? Because you led the NBA in assists, you ran the pick and roll very well. You had the number 1 amount of isolation attempts of anyone in the entire NBA. You had those attempts. And there's also no world where he plays better than he does last year. That's how I feel. I think there's some people that might sit on the other side. I just don't see it where he can turn back the clock enough where the hamstring gets better. I think James Harden is who he is at this point. And that's still a good player, a fine player. It's not a guy who, as your number 2, can win an NBA championship.
Yeah. That's a very fair point. I'm not going to dispute that too much. But what I will say again is he was a 20-10 guy, and he should have been an all-star if we're being honest. Drew Holiday got that nod over him, and no disrespect to Drew Holiday, but Harden should have been an all-star last year. He was, again, leading the league in assists, and their offense was boring and unimaginative and slow, and they never got out on the break, and they didn't have any off-ball movement. You pray to God that they're implementing some of that, where the burden should come off of his shoulders as an ISO player. And maybe he still wants that, and he should get those opportunities, because if he's going to prove to be valuable, he has to succeed in those opportunities. But Maxey still has the chance to step up again as a number 2 scorer. And again, you're hoping that there's some sort of unlocking of bumping Tobias up a few points per game, or getting him in better situations, or a little bit more flow in the offense, and just something that's more fluid and allows them to play the game. They're like, I don't know if we all remember the first like 10 games when Harden got here and we were like, what the hell is going on? Everything's working, everyone's moving, they're on the fast break all the time. And then it slowed down and it was just pick and rolls. It was just Harden ISOs and Justin Embiid ISOs, and like that was it.
Yeah.
So the only thing that I can really look for to find some hope is the fact that there should be a little bit more of that playing free basketball, fast basketball, and maybe Harden buys into that, because it looked like he was kind of bringing that rather than just buying into it when he first got here.
Yeah, but the only like uptick in pace is basically his like full court pass, which he's excellent at. He's absolutely
Yes,
excellent
that's
at
true.
those for sure. And that is extremely helpful when you have a guy like Tyrese Maxey who can leak out on the break, catch those, and finish incredibly well. Maxey, who, by the way, shout out NBA University, is number 1 in the entire NBA for lowest turnovers per drive attempt, which is pretty incredible. Like, we've talked about his maturity as far as like a playmaker and just as a whole, as a basketball player and as a human being. It's incredibly impressive for a guy that's 22 years old. I every time I circle back to like how the Sixers can get better or what their outlook is as a team, it's all the gamble of how good Tyrese Maxey can get. And I do believe in him. I think he's going to be terrific. I don't know if I'm ready to say at age 23 at next year, this guy's ready to just take the keys and drive this car to a championship, because that's a lot to ask out of this kid. And to be honest, Maxey has over exceeded expectations by so far. Like, it would be extremely unfair to him to look at it as like a failure if that's not the case, because it frankly should not be his job. And it's impressive that he's in that conversation. But I just keep circling back to what the Sixers' legitimate championship chances are how good Tyrese Maxey can get.
Yeah, I fully agree. And Tyrese has proven time and again that every time we think he is outperforming himself, he takes it up a notch. So I don't think it's out of the realm to believe he'll get even better next year. And I think he'll be shooting more threes, and I think he'll be getting more opportunities as an on-ball creator as well. So we'll get to see some more creativity out of him, and the mid-range work a little bit more. Like, I think that there's going to be more food on his plate to eat. And
Yeah.
I don't see a reason why not. So with him, I'm super excited to see what he brings. Do you want to move here? We got a couple of free agents to talk about. I didn't know if you wanted to touch on Jaden Springer really quick, because
Hit me.
we've talked about him a lot. I love the kid. I think he's going to be so good. I'm really excited about him. Just like, dude, athletically, he's an anomaly and so strong and intense on the defensive end. I love it. And I think under Pat Bev too, which we'll talk about in a sec, I think it's a really good thing for him to get to learn under Pat Bev.
Yeah, I'll say, so we're recording this before Summer League Game 2. If you want to watch my full thoughts on Summer League Game 2, you can tune into the live, which will be on this channel as well, with the guys who are at Edge of Philly Sports. So we're purely talking about Game 1. I was a little unimpressed with Jaden Springer, to be honest. I see it. Like, I see the athleticism.
Yeah.
I see the defensive. There's no doubt in my mind he's an NBA defender, and I've said this for the past year now. And I will say, like, I only went down to Blue Coats twice last year. Saw a couple other games for a couple minutes. He did look more polished offensively, but it's still not at the level that the Sixers need it.
Yeah.
Now, granted, like, he is doing things that he will not be asked to do in an NBA situation. He's not going to have to attack off the dribble and create his own jump shot in the way that he is right now in Summer League. But when you're a third year guy going into Summer League, the expectation is for you to dominate. And I didn't feel that way about Jaden Springer. I thought he had his flashes. The jump shot, I'm still not buying, unfortunately. And I know he's a guy who shot 40% in college, but it was on very limited attempts. And I think that very much drove up his draft stock in a way that I looking back, I don't think is the case. I do think Nick Nurse will give him a shot this year, and I'm excited. I hope he grabs it and runs with it. I hope that I'm not counting him out after one Summer League game by any means, but I just wish there was I'm not seeing the offensive polish that I was hoping for.
Yeah, and I guess we have some scars from defensive specialists that don't shoot very well.
Plenty.
So it's
I do want to shout out. Oh, my bad. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it is a very good reason to doubt or have some suspicions, but I'm just excited for him to get a chance, like, to see what he can actually do in the NBA as well.
For sure, and I do want to shout out Turkavian Smith, who is very much my guy. I see. I can't stop making the Bones Highland comparison to him.
Yeah.
I think To me, he's like Bones Highland 2.0. Now, don't get me wrong, Bones Highland's a guy that was traded for just about scraps this year and struggled to stay in the rotation with the Clippers. But the Sixers just have never really had that archetype of player. I get it, like the frame's a concern. He weighs 165 pounds, which is nothing for a guy that is 6'4". But dude, he's just a hooper. The Sixers lack guys that like you drop them off at a random blacktop and they would dominate. Like they just don't like think about dropping Matisse Thybulle off at a blacktop. Do you think he like cooks everyone there? Because I don't. You think PJ Tucker would beat everyone on a one-on-one situation with blacktop? Because I don't think that's the case. I don't.
PJ Tucker has a bag.
No. But and don't get me wrong, like he's good. Every NBA player is incredible at basketball. But I think sometimes like the Sixers specifically have gotten too obsessed with grabbing like these niche like one thing they're excellent at and hope the rest develops. I just like basketball players, man. I like guys that do compete, that have a bag to them, that like when all else fails, they're going to figure something out. That's Terquavian Smith to me. I can't believe he went undrafted. I'm very happy he's on a Sixers two-way deal, and I think there's a real chance he's a rotation player moving forward.
Well, I'm hopeful for him as well. I did like what I saw in game one, but I do want to move here to some of the free agents that the Sixers have signed. A lot of almost Sixers have finally become Sixers this past week, starting off with someone I'm super excited about, Patrick Beverley, finally here. A lot that he had to say on his podcast. Cool of him to drop the news himself. Big fan of Verone as well. So cool to see that whole situation play out, and Pat Bev is a Sixer. What are your thoughts there, Sean?
I'm pretty excited about it. I think more than the consensus. And I will say I submitted a question to the Pat Bev pod.
I saw that.
Yeah, where I asked the chances of him ever coming to Philly if he was ever close. He pretty much dodged the question as far as directly asking, but I'm very happy that it came to fruition. I do think he's a guy that is made for Philadelphia. The Sixers, as much as like PJ Tucker was that dog that they needed, and he did yell in Embiid's ear, and he does make those diving on the floor plays, they still need more of that. It wasn't enough last year. Pat Bev's absolutely that. I also think he works as like a defensive-minded pairing with Maxey or even with Harden if he's here. So I like that. He spoke really highly of Nick Nurse on the podcast too, which I think is very cool. They were Nurse coach Pat Bev at the then D-League level, the G-League level, way back in the day, which is pretty cool that worked out. But I think he's a good veteran leader. He's another good locker room guy that's going to start bringing a presence. There still needs to be some changes to the culture. To me, this is what the Pat Bev edition is about. And he seems excited to be here, which to me is also very important.
Yeah, I did watch that podcast today, his most recent one, and he had a lot of good things to say about Nurse and Morey and just kind of what he was planning to bring to Philadelphia. And everyone's always said the city was built for him. He was built for the city. You love to see a guy like that kind of embrace it. And he talked about on the pod that he's going to be living in Philly. He wants to feel the city. So excited for him to get to see what this is all about and the fans here. And I think that he's going to love it. And there's going to be games where like Pat Bev is like everyone's favorite player. And I can't wait for those nights that he is calling on the crowd and, makes a big play for all that. And he's a veteran backup point guard. Like we've kind of been asking for a player, maybe not directly this archetype, but he's at least a guy that can handle the ball, isn't going to be stupid, and is going to play intense defense the entire time he's in the game, and bring a respect and to the game that I think the Sixers have lacked in the past. And we've talked about them just being kind of, lazy and pretentious as basketball players in the way that they attack a regular season game. And I think Pat Beverley is a guy that does not do that, does not take it for granted for sure. So I think I'm with you there. I'm very excited about Pat Bev, and we've talked about him so many times almost coming here. So it's nice to see him finally make the move.
Yeah, absolutely. And another interesting little plot twist in it, or whatever you want to call it, is he did speak to Doc Rivers beforehand. And I do have the quote here as well. Per Pat Bev, when he talked to Doc Rivers on the phone, his response, exact words, quote, "I love Philadelphia for you. They need you. You will be great with Joel, James. If I had you last season, we would have been a different team." I do think this is partially, Doc Rivers, can't just can't just swallow an L. Never does. He always needs a little something else. But I do like that he said that about Pat Bev. I do think he's got like a necessary component to this team. And don't get me wrong, like he's for sure past his prime. I don't have the highest of expectations, and even the prime of Pat Beverley, like an all defensive guy for sure, but you weren't getting much on the offensive end ever. He's a capable 3-point shooter. His numbers have been down the past 4 years, which is a long time. But he's still like an average, at least respectable 3-point shooter, a guy that will do it. And every once in a while, he will like get a nice bucket and let you hear about it, which I like. He gave LeBron the too small this year, which was awesome. He's got that to him. So I was surprised to hear him talk to Doc. I was surprised to see Doc speak highly of Philadelphia. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, man, I try not to think about that guy too much. I can't believe he keeps finding his way back into the conversation here. Thought we were done. But yeah, I mean, disappointed but not surprised. I feel like it's a good way to kind of just encapsulate Doc Rivers' experience here as a whole. And that's kind of just another thing, another way to just deflect any sort of responsibility for the way the last couple of seasons ended. And but maybe he's right. Maybe he's right. Maybe this is what they need. You know, I saw a couple minutes of like highlights from a game, the 2018. This is going to sound ridiculous. This is going to sound just ridiculous. Like the 2018 series against the Heat in the first round. And it's not really about anyone specific there. But I just remember seeing Joel like making shots and talking shit like immediately, and like giving stuff to the other team's bench and the other team's players, and like celebrating and being in people's faces. And like, I know we've tried to get him to calm down for so many years, and he has, and he's done a great job, and he's gotten, immensely better since that point in time. But the attitude isn't there as much anymore, man. And I love that Pat Bev is that way, and I hope that he's always that way with Joel, because I want to see that again, man. I want to see that like punk attitude from Joel. He hasn't brought it out in a long time. It's always like, it's just little shots here and there, which you love to see because he's on point every time. But I want him to just like be out there like he used to be. And I think Pat Bev does a lot of that.
I do miss the Twitter trolling and Instagram trolling specifically.
I'm not even talking about online, man. I want like in the game. Like he would dunk on somebody and shimmy in their face. Like I haven't seen that in so long.
You're right, but he had to reel that in. And
for sure.
Like I loved every second of it as he did it, and I still makes me smile when he'll break out the occasional, like you'll see like a moment where he'll let a guy know or do a little celebration, and I do love it. But like, you don't want your best player doing that. You want
Not
Patrick Beverley doing it. There is definitely a world where the Sixers turn into like the ultimate shit talking team, where it's just PJ Tucker, Pat Bev, Joel Embiid going around barking at people. But dude, if they do that for a whole season and we lose in the second round once again, I will lose my absolute mind.
I'd rather be that team, though. I'd rather be that team than a bitch team that gets bitched all the time. And it seems like we're a bitch team that gets bitched all the time. And I'd rather be the other way around. If you're going to go out, you might as well go out talking shit. It's better than putting your tail between your legs and freaking cracking up and dapping up your boys that just kicked your ass in game 7. Like, I'd rather be that team. I'd rather be the team that people hate and that people like, oh my God, they never stop talking shit. I'd rather be that team. It's way better to be that team.
I hear that. I just don't want to turn into the Memphis Grizzlies of the East, man. And I think there's a world where that happens.
Well, your best player isn't going to go, I'm fine in the East. I'm not afraid of anybody in the East.
Or break out and you're not going to Instagram Live, hopefully.
Yeah, or do the gritty while you walk off a game in December. Like, there's levels to it. And, like, Joel Embiid is the freaking MVP, man. He's not Dylan Brooks. So, like, there's a bit of a difference.
Sure.
And they're corny and, like, just not it. But there's a difference. There definitely is a big difference.
Yeah, you're right. And I do. Like, it does. I want somewhat of that. I want a middle ground of that. I want more of it than we saw last year. I just need to make sure that there's a line in the sand on it as they go into it. But let's talk about a guy who doesn't talk a lot of shit by most regards, and that is Mo Bamba. Mo Bamba, has a song about him. He's a guy that was once a highly recruited guy, has not really found footing in the NBA. For me, he's been very much like an eye test versus analytics just don't match up. I personally love Mo Bamba. I've been a fan of his. To me, like, if you have a 7'10" wingspan and shoot above average from 3, there's always a spot for you on my roster. He's also a guy that is friends with Joel. What do you think of the Mo Bamba signing?
I like it, man. It caught me off guard. It was like literally right before we started this, and I saw that you named the episode that, but one of my buddies texted me and was just like Mo Bamba, and I caught me off guard. I'm excited for it. I want to get your really quick before I keep going. Like, you think, does this affect Paul Reed coming back at all? Like, you wouldn't expect it to, right?
So I want to read the Woj tweet here, which made me a little nervous. So for starters, I think the plan for Paul Reed, by all accounts, was to basically match whatever offer. I think the Sixers did the respectable thing of basically like, go get a market. If you get an offer, we're going to match it, basically. So they haven't officially signed the offer sheet. I still think Paul Reed's coming back. I also think there's a lot of worlds where Nick Nurse looks at Paul Reed as a 4 rather than a 5 and wants that flexibility, wants another true big man. Joel Embiid was the only guy above 6'9" on the Sixers roster until right now, until Mo Bamba was signed. But the Woj report, so first it was just the initial Mo Bamba has agreed to a 1-year deal, and then said Philadelphia is bringing in Bamba with the intention of keeping restricted free agent Paul Reed, but Bamba gives these Sixers some security behind Joel Embiid if they do lose Reed. I politely commented under that and just said losing Paul Reed would be the worst decision the Sixers franchise has ever made. Might have been a little strong, but I don't want to see Paul Reed walk under any circumstances.
I would say I don't think that this really does it. I actually think I don't know if I'd say I want to say it increases the possibility of him coming back, but I think we've been talking about him playing the 4 for like a while. I think that's where he belongs. And they're gonna be so nasty like defensively. If that's the combo, dude, I just wish they kept McDaniels because that would have been just a gross lineup to put out. But you got to think Mo Bamba gives you the exact thing that we haven't had, right? He's not afraid to shoot the 3. He's gonna rim run, and he's going to catch lobs, and he's going to block shots. And we've been like praying for this kind of player. I mean, not to say that he's the savior by any means. Like he's going to play sparingly minutes. He's going to, do a very specific role, but I think it's a type of player that fits well if James Harden is handling the basketball or just in general. It's a nice guy to have on your bench. He has struggled in, now multiple cities, but maybe this is the place that he finds some footing and, he's not going to be asked to do too much and you have other options. So it's just a flexibility thing there. And I think it's a good signing it's just 1 year and I'm sure it's not a lot of money. So kind of low risk, high reward.
Yeah, he's a guy that every coach seems to absolutely hate, which is a little bit of a concern. That's one of the reasons he can't find minutes. I've seen like the highs of Mo Bamba are awesome. The lows are pretty bad. His block rate, he's been near the top of the NBA every single year. He's been in the league, even with the limited minutes and things like that. I'm also a little bit victim of like remembering when they play against the Sixers, and I will not forget the Joel Embiid versus Mo Bamba duel where Bamba hit literally 7 threes in the game and just could not miss. I don't expect to get that on an every night basis, but the fact that that's in the tank to me is very appealing. And I did mention the Joel Embiid relationship. I think that's notable. I always think it's important to keep guys around that, keep Joel happy. And there's very few players that he seems to have a strong relationship with. Mo Bamba, also a Drew Hanlon guy, so works in that same kind of community and works out with Joel on a number of occasions. So I think that's awesome. I expect them to be getting in some work together this summer, which will be great. Maybe this is what he needs. To me, like it's a low risk, high reward move, and I don't know. I like it. I'm happy to be bought back in on the Mo Bamba train because he's been a guy that I've liked forever, and it has not aged very well. So I guess this is kind of a last ditch attempt for my take in Mo Bamba's career, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I'll put it this way: like the Sixers are gonna have this role etched out in their bench, regardless, like whether it was gonna be DeAndre Jordan, Dwayne Dedmon, or now Mo Bamba. I would like to think that at this point in his career, Mo Bamba is an upgrade to those two guys in consecutive seasons. So it's better to have a guy that has something, as at least able to like get up and down the floor without passing out and protect the rim better than the two of those guys. So they were going to have it anyway. It's good to know that he's the one that they take on there. How many games will it take for Nick Nurse to play Mo Bamba and Joel Embiid at the same time?
I think there will be a situation where it happens. I think like for like I don't want to say end of game situations because there's very much world where you don't want both of them on the floor. But if there's like a lob threat opportunity or something, you roll out like a Bamba and Embiid in the front court. Nobody's catching a lob. Nobody's getting up for that. So
yeah.
I think there will be opportunities where it can be used. And even if they go against like a Minnesota Timberwolves or something like that, like why not give it a shot? Let Embiid hang out on the perimeter or let him. Either way, you'll figure out a way to use them. I think there's worlds where there will be situations where it's used, and I think a Bamba and Paul Reed front court would be pretty sick as well.
Yeah, I'm just imagining Joel getting doubled and Mo Bamba in the dunker and him being able to just throw it up next to the rim. And it's better than having Tucker there. He's not a very vertical athlete, but I mean, I guess this kind of puts us in like, if you're thinking about the starting lineup as it stands right now, same thing as last year: Harden, Maxey, Harris, Tucker, Embiid, and then your next 5 is looking like Pat Bev, Melton, Daniel House, Paul Reed, Mo Bamba, given that Paul Reed comes back.
And by the way, Bamba can like legitimately shoot too. Like I'm pulling up his numbers now. For his career, he's a 35.9% three-point shooter on 2.5 attempts per game, which is pretty good for a big man, especially if you even want to look back like the 21-22 season with Orlando, he shot 38.1% on 4 attempts per game. Like that's
legit.
That's legit, yeah. And 4 attempts per game for a guy of his frame and size is really shocking to see. So that's appealing to me. Like again, this is the box score and the analytics don't exactly match the eye test with him for sure, but I'm in on Mo Bamba, and to me, this is worth a shot. I will 10 times out of 10 take him over the DeAndre Jordan, Andre Drummond. Drummond was okay. Dwight Howard, whatever. That category of big man that the Sixers just have to have on their team. Give me Mo Bamba in that slot.
Yeah, we'll take him. So this, like I said, it kind of leans out their roster there. As of right now, I don't know what their cap space looks like with these 2 contracts we put on, albeit them very small contracts. So just kind of give me a rundown what's the outlook right now in terms of any more free agents, any trades on the horizon? Like, what are you expecting, or just general outlook from right now? I guess a lot of it is up in the air.
Yeah, I don't expect much. I think, honestly, that's probably the only other signing that they make until the Paul Reed one, which I still think will happen. I still expect Paul Reed back. They're going to sit back and figure out if there is a James Harden trade, if there is a Tobias Harris trade. It's looking unlikely for both at this point in time, but it only takes one offer. It only takes one team. And if things can change, that can happen quickly. Opportunity is not a lengthy visitor, as Daryl Morey's Twitter bio will tell you. So I do expect the phones to keep ringing, that throughout the summer, they're going to keep exploring that, but I can't see them making any sort of significant trade. I do believe they still have the mid-level exception. So they could offer some tier of player. I've seen some Kelly Oubre stuff swirling around. I think that's pretty much made up out of thin air. No indications that the Sixers are actually connected to him. That's possible. They still have a need for a wing. So, I mean, as much as we'll hate Kelly Oubre for times, like I wouldn't totally hate that signing. So, but I don't know. It's going to be moves within the margin until the bigger fish here decide what pond they're swimming in.
I think that's good analysis. Is Tyrese Maxey untouchable to you?
Yeah. I wouldn't trade him for Dame Lillard, which is essentially the question. I wouldn't trade him for Paul George or Kawhi either, which is probably all we got on the table. I mean, you've heard my spiel about, I do still think there's a world where Joel Embiid takes a step back and is more of a defensive-minded guy, more of a rebounding focus on that, and isn't as high usage offensively, and the Sixers are still contenders. Tyrese Maxey is a huge part of that world, and you find another high-caliber offensive player to pair with them, that's still a team that I'm ready to root for and be back in on. So for me, Tyrese Maxey untouchable.
I love it. I'm just going to agree with you and not go into any more depth. I think you covered it there. I mean, I did have this conversation yesterday with some of my friends, and I actually think I am on board with you. Like, especially for Dame. If you're thinking just for Dame, dude, like he's what, 33, and I mean, he's had a great career. Absolutely had a great career. He just signed this the max extension where he makes so much money over the next few years. Like, you are absolutely nailing in your coffin of the next 3 seasons are win or that's it. We are going into a pit of despair following those 3 seasons because we have no assets and we have no money.
Or picks.
Yeah. Like, you have nothing. So you're in a really, really bad spot. Tyrese Maxey is the hope that your franchise continues to be productive into the twilight years of Joel and whatever comes after this James Harden and Tobias season. So I think I'm with you, man. I don't think it makes sense for them right now. And again, that's another reason why, like, I don't know. I feel like this summer has played out so it looks so badly on the Sixers' part. And I'm not going to deny that they haven't done it good. Like, they've maybe missed at times here. I'm going to absolutely say that, but I feel like they've been kind of handcuffed and they don't have that many options. And the options that people think are there, I don't think are there. So they got to work with what they have. And Tyrese Maxey's growth is maybe the paramount thing to them continuing their success.
Yeah, totally. And my final thoughts on I do think the Harden and Dame situations are very different just because of, all of it. But for both sides and for the Trailblazers specifically, I will say you should not care where these guys want to play. You trade Dame Lillard to whoever offers you the best package. Feel the exact same about James Harden. If it's the San Antonio Spurs that offer the biggest package, you trade that player there, because I think you owe it to your fans and your organization to do what's best for it way more than you owe the player. If Miami's throwing scraps, the Tyler Hero, Kyle Lowry, Jaime Jaquez, and 2 first-round picks, that's not a Dame Lillard package. So do what's best for the organization. I don't want to go on a whole spiel, but I do think it's crazy if they like go down that lane and just like give Dame away.
I fully agree with you. And I'm not normally the one to like side with a franchise or side with a team. But for him to say, I only want to go to Miami, and for that to be public knowledge that he doesn't want to play anywhere else, you're going to get nothing. You're going to get absolutely nothing. If Damian Lillard, who's a top 75 NBA player of all time, gets traded for Nikola Jovic, Tyler Hero, and a couple of firsts, we've now found ourselves in NBA graveyard scenarios. That is despicable. And they can't be the way that the NBA allows itself to operate. And it's no disrespect to Dame. I think that is like, I don't know.
It's a real issue.
I don't like that. Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like that he can just say, like, I'm only going to play for Miami. Because if that was the case, you should have, when you became a free agent, you should have signed there.
Right.
And you have that opportunity. And I think there's cases where asking out for a trade is reasonable and makes sense. This is a time where it's reasonable and it makes sense. And if he said, hey, preferably I want to go to a team that's contending or trying to contend, not a rebuild, I think that's fair. But for him to say there is one team and one team only, and they're going to give you a pile of dog shit in return, and you're going to have to reap the benefits of nothing that you get from trading the best player that's ever played for your franchise, that's wrong. Yeah. I think that's just morally incorrect, regardless of how many years. And I mean, I don't want to diminish what he has done for them and what he deserves, because he does deserve to play for a team that wants to win.
Sure, yeah, but like there's a lot of teams that want to win. It's not just Miami Heat. I guarantee you that. Yeah. And like to your point about the contracts, the way this organization, this league was meant to run is like when you are a free agent, you get to pick where you go. You're not allowed to force your hand after you sign a contract agreeing to play for a specific team for that amount of time, for that amount of money. And it's kind of shifted gears to now it's guys take the money and then find a way to force out. And it's just like we just saw Bradley Beal do the same exact thing. It's obviously, I get it from the player's perspective. They're getting the most money this way. That's why this all happens. But if you're the organization, then they're breaking their agreement, then you have no obligation to them. And again, Dame is one of the more unique cases because of everything that he means to that franchise for sure. But I still think they owe it to themselves as a franchise, their fans, and all the other parts of it to there's just not going to be another player that looks back and says, man, I really like how the Trailblazers traded him to the Heat. Like, that's an organization I want to play by. That's not going to happen. So do what's right for you, get the best return, and it's time to rebuild. Dame should have been traded years ago.
Yeah, and on top of that, like the whole bird rights situation and being able to sign these contracts to your home team was put in place to keep players there, not for you to wait, be eligible to sign it, and then immediately ask to be traded following that. Like, I think that diminishes the entire fact of being able to say, hey, I stayed with my team so I can sign this extension, so I can get this extra money, so I can make way more than people that left. Because you're just doing the same thing. You're just waiting an extra year and then making it worse for the team by having to then pay you that money, wait a year, and then trade you for nothing. So that we went down a little bit of a tangent there. I'm glad we got that off our chest, though. Anything else you want to go through before we wrap up here?
No, I think that's it. So yeah, I'm gonna pop on the Sixers Summer League game. Make sure to stay posted for me and the guys at Edge of Philly Sports will be on live after just about every Summer League game. So stay on your toes for that. Appreciate all you guys for tuning into this episode. As always, I think this was a good one. At least a little bit of Sixers news to keep us rolling through the offseason. So make sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe on the channel, drop a comment. Let me know what you guys are thinking. And me and James will talk with you next time.